Tonight, shutting down. Victoria closes all pubs, clubs and gyms, while police set up a new coronavirus task force.
If people simply behave as normal, if they don't take this seriously, if they act selfishly, then people will die.
Also tonight, school's out. Victorian students start the Easter holidays early. Centrelink at breaking point. Huge queues outside offices and government websites crash. And the NRL finally suspends its season while the AFL begins shedding staff. Good evening, Mary Gearin with ABC News. Today there have been more scenes that would have been hard to imagine before the coronavirus crisis began. Long queues forming outside Centrelink branches across the country as people lose their jobs and look to the government for help. At midday, businesses including pubs, clubs, cinemas and gyms shut their doors. Cafes and restaurants could only serve takeaway. Schools have also shut down and won't reopen until next term. As well as the queues at Centrelink, the MyGov website has crashed and the share market has lost another $100 billion, with banks and industrial companies among the biggest to fall. In the words of the Prime Minister, for many Australians, it's becoming the toughest year of our lives. Today, the tally of people testing positive in Victoria rose by 61, including some in their early teens. State political reporter Richard Willingham begins our coverage.
Working up a sweat and quenching a thirst, two pastimes that can no longer be done in public after a national shutdown of some non-essential businesses.
If people simply behave as normal, if they don't take this seriously, if they act selfishly, then people will die.
From midday today, pubs, clubs and nightclubs are closed. Restaurants and cafes can provide takeaway services. Indoor sports and gyms are a no-go, cinemas too, while churches, mosques, temples have all had to close. The Premier is clearly frustrated the message to keep the distance hasn't been getting through and has enlisted 500 police to enforce the new rules.
You won't be able to go to the pub because the pub is shut. That doesn't mean you can have all your mates round to home and get on the beers. That's not appropriate. It's not essential, it's not needed, and all it will do is spread the virus.
Yesterday, the Premier, along with his New South Wales counterpart, pushed hard for a shutdown of non-essential services, warning it could be in place within 48 hours. It caused confusion. For now, retailers and some businesses can remain open, but further closures are likely.
We took a big step, a very, very big step. Not easy. That's what I wanted. That's what we got. Now, this is step one, and it's called step one for a reason. There is almost certainly going to be a step two and maybe even beyond that.
$8.30 free range, $8 tray here. Yeah, for free range here.
Even in Italy, food stores and supermarkets remain open. So too pharmacies, and there are no plans to close them here. But many of the retailers still open are already moving online.
All the sales that we're going to be focusing on will be primarily online, because I'm pretty sure we're not sure when the shutdown is going to be, like lockdown and stuff, so we're kind of just implementing a backup plan.
If you can work from home, you should work from home.
Queensland is the latest state to close its borders, but Victoria's are staying open. There are also new visitor restrictions for hospitals, no more than 2 people per day for each patient. 2,000 extra ventilators are on order and 2 million more masks are due to arrive in the next fortnight.
We are treating this as if we are in wartime conditions.
Paramedics are now shaving off their beards so face masks fit properly.
It's going to grow back.
A sign of how every little bit helps fight the spread. Richard Willingham, ABC News, Melbourne.
The school holidays have started early for Victorian students. Today's shutdown is to help teachers use the rest of the week to prepare online lessons in case schools have to stay closed after the Easter break. Nicole Asher reports.
School's out early in Victoria and students are coming to terms with an uncertain future.
I'm actually really concerned about exams and how everything's going to turn out.
I could probably just stay home personally, but it's a bit difficult to find things to do.
Daniel Andrews made the call to extend the school break, but he's warned it won't seem like a holiday.
I'm advising every family that school holidays where kids might be going and staying at friends' places, kids might be out going to shopping malls and doing all the usual things, that is not appropriate.
Students whose parents provide essential services like healthcare can stay at school this week. Childcare centres and kindergartens are also staying open for now.
I think for working parents, obviously, it's how we can keep working in the current environment and also have support for our kids.
Some students are already adjusting to online learning. Poppy Knight is in Year 9 at Ivanhoe Grammar, one of the numerous independent schools that closed early.
There should be a files button at the top that you guys can access.
Oh yeah, I found it. Sort of mixed emotions because obviously I'm missing out on seeing my friends every day and I don't get to be in class and have the one-on-one talk with the teacher.
But online isn't an option for everyone.
We know around Australia more than 1 million households are not connected to the internet overall, so it's not only the issue around whether you've got a device or not, it's also the issue about whether you're connected at home or not.
Ballarat grammar student Zoe Wiedemann does have internet access on her family's farm in Western Victoria, but the service is patchy.
If we were to internet was to shut down and not work for a day, it'd be pretty hard to keep in contact with my teachers.
With Victorian schools now pupil-free, teachers will spend the rest of the week refining online learning plans. Schools are scheduled to return in mid-April, but the Premier has acknowledged that's far from certain.
We're going to use this critical time, this precious time this week, to be ready for distance learning in the event that we need to go to that.
Nicole Asher, ABC News, Melbourne.
The rapid shutdown of non-essential services has seen tens of thousands of Australians join the ranks of the unemployed, many for the first time. It happened so fast, government computers couldn't cope. Here's political editor Andrew Probyn.
The first symptom of an economic pandemic.
I'm here because my job no longer exists.
It's not just lower class, middle class or high class. Everybody's getting affected by it.
Thousands lining up outside Centrelink offices across the country.
You can feel it. Everyone's a little bit funny and on edge.
Everyone's anxious. No one knows what's going on.
Joining the job queue, many for the first time.
It's like watching a horror movie on TV, except it doesn't finish in 90 minutes. It just goes on day after day.
They are lining up at Centrelink offices as we speak. Something unimaginable at this scale only weeks ago.
Livelihoods extinguished by the coronavirus shutdown.
I'm at the stage now where I'm on the scrap heap because I'm 64 years old.
That started for tens of thousands of Australians at midday when their workplaces shut indefinitely. Pubs, clubs, cinemas, restaurants and indoor sports complexes. Anxieties heightened when they couldn't get help online.
MyGov has not been offline.
The minister wrongly insisting the website was operational, but overwhelmed by a malicious cyber attack, a claim he was forced to retract an hour later.
The DDoS alarms show no evidence of a specific attack today.
This wasn't a cyber attack, it was an incompetence attack.
The government has promised to boost capacity online and extend call centre hours to keep up with demand.
For many, young and old, 2020 will be the toughest year of our lives.
MPs gathered in reduced numbers, sanitised and spaced at a healthy distance to pass tens of billions of dollars in emergency measures, including income support. Younger Australians have long been told they're the lucky ones. Well, hardship has come knocking. The government expects the coronavirus crisis will see 1 million Australians lose their jobs over the next few months, more than doubling the unemployment rate to about 11%. And it's already banking on having to spend an extra $40 billion by August to further prop up the economy. A new normal has come suddenly.
Obviously, a lot of people throughout the whole of Australia are in the same boat as me. So just keep my chin up.
Andrew Probyn, ABC News, Canberra.
As Australia shuts down, tens of thousands of small businesses face financial ruin. More than $100 billion in help has been promised, but will it save jobs and will it arrive in time? Andrew Robertson has been looking into it.
For Sydney shop owner Terry Winter, the government's help is welcome, but more is needed.
For us, it's looking at around 16% of total staff income. And that's just not enough to keep an employee if the stores can't be open.
Employers with a turnover of up to $50 million will get at least $20,000 with a maximum payment of $100,000. Charities and not-for-profits will also be eligible. The money will come from the tax office and will be based on the amount of income tax the business collects from its staff. The handouts will be paid in instalments and in most cases they'll continue to flow till mid-October. But there is a catch. Employers first have to lodge their March business activity statement, which means the first payment will be mid-April at the earliest.
For some businesses, the first payment will be too late, there is no doubt.
To encourage lending, the government is now prepared to guarantee 50% of loans up to a total of $40 billion. But would anyone want to borrow in the current climate?
We're going to be overcommitted already, so the chances of wanting to get loans is pretty low.
As the government tries to limit the economic impact of this health crisis, the Prime Minister says the help being offered to business comes with a very big string attached. When the worst is over, Mr Morrison says all those workers who lose their jobs in the coming months should be rehired.
This is the unwritten contract that is being undertaken between Australian employees and employers as we speak.
Terry Winter says while all businesses want to keep all their staff, the reality may be very different. Andrew Robertson, ABC News.
Still to come this hour, the bungle that turned cruise ship passengers into a public health risk.
From the moment we left the ship, and then just not use a good go straight through. Didn't ask any fevers or any health checks or that. It was just straight on down.
I hope they're appropriately tracked by New South Wales Health. Otherwise, this is a real own goal.
Also, Dr Norman Swan with his analysis of the latest protective measures. That's coming up.
There are concerns about an increase in coronavirus cases in Indonesia after official figures show the death rate is on par with Italy. 48 people have died and 514 others have tested positive. That's a mortality rate of 9%. But it's feared the number of cases is being underreported and tens of thousands of people could be infected. Authorities have converted an entire athletes' village in Jakarta into an emergency hospital to hold 4,000 patients. And a state of emergency has come into force in the capital, forcing bars, cinemas and many other businesses to close. We can't get a public gathering any smaller than this. Germany has banned meetings of more than 2 people. It's the latest European country to face a dramatic increase in infections, and Chancellor Angela Merkel has gone into isolation after she was potentially exposed to the disease. Europe correspondent Bridget Brennan reports.
Some moments of cheer among the growing fear and anxiety. Germans appeared on their balconies to thank health workers on the front line. And some musicians gave impromptu performances to comfort their neighbours.
If you play songs from home, it brings people closer together. Then hopefully that makes everybody feel better.
But after many ignored social distancing advice, the German government has now placed tough restrictions on movement, some of the strictest measures seen in the world. Groups of more than 2 people are now banned from gathering in public.
Being in public is permitted only alone, except with your family or with one other person.
Shortly after making the announcement, Angela Merkel herself was quarantined after learning her doctor had tested positive for the virus. As a disaster unfolds in Italy, Russia and Cuba are sending medical specialists and equipment. Another 651 people died in Italy in the last 24 hours. Italians are being warned not to let their guard down, even as the rate of new infections fell to its lowest level since the outbreak began. With Britain just 2 or 3 weeks behind Italy, Boris Johnson signalled a widespread lockdown could be on the horizon. Many took advantage of the sunshine on the weekend, flocking to parks and markets. Now police could be called in to force people back indoors. For the most part, the streets in London are now deserted after the British government shut down businesses. It's now turning its attention to 1.5 million vulnerable people with underlying health conditions. They're being told to stay at home for 3 months. Bridget Brennan, ABC News, London.
A political standoff in the United States has stalled a $1.75 trillion stimulus package to help America through the pandemic. The president says talks are continuing despite Democrats blocking the bill after pushing for more healthcare funding.
I want to assure the American people that we're doing everything we can each day to confront and ultimately defeat this horrible, invisible enemy. We're at war. In a true sense, we're at war.
States are facing shortages of tests and medical equipment, with this New Jersey drive-through clinic shutting half an hour after opening. Disgraced movie producer Harvey Weinstein, who was jailed earlier this month, is among 33,000 people in the country infected with the disease. A powerful earthquake has rocked Croatia during a partial coronavirus lockdown of the capital. There are at least 235 cases confirmed in the country. The 5.3 magnitude quake, that's the largest to affect Zagreb in 140 years, damaged buildings, left several people injured and forced hospitals to be evacuated. To finance now, and the local share market suffered one of the heaviest falls of the crisis so far today, more than 6%. Here's Alan Kohler.
Well, the market opened 8.4% lower, which would have made it the second biggest one-day fall in this bear market so far. But a few brave buyers moved in and got it back to a close of minus 6%. Down to number 5 on the 2020 hit parade. Ardent Leisure, which closed Dreamworld today, fell 36%, making it the biggest loser on the market in the past month. It's down 90%. Village Roadshow fell 26% today as its cinemas closed. Retailers Adairs, Kathmandu and Nick Scali down 27%, 31% and 14% today. Afterpay 28%. Among the leaders, investors just ran away from Macquarie and AMP. Mall operators like Vicinity Centres and Stockland were also dumped, and the banks fell 10% and 12%. But there were some rises, including Sydney Airport, CSL and Horizon. Also, Newcrest rose with the gold price, although the iron ore price fell over the weekend and oil dropped 10%. The US market fell more than 4% on Friday, while in Asia today there were falls in Hong Kong and Korea, but a rise in Tokyo. And the Australian dollar has fallen a cent since Friday night as money stampedes into the safety of US Treasury bonds, pushing up the prices of both the bonds and the US dollars needed to buy them. And speaking of bonds, you remember last Thursday the Reserve Bank launched its version of quantitative easing, which involves targeting a 3-year bond rate of 0.25% to keep down the interest rates on fixed-term loans. Well, here's a chart of the 3-year bond rate. And it's almost there, down to 0.25%, but not quite. And finally, a bit of good news. Petrol prices have been infuriatingly going up lately, but they're headed down now. Should be $1 a litre soon. And that's finance.
There's been a call for clearer messaging from the government on social distancing to target young people. Figures show more than a fifth of Australia's cases so far are among people aged under 30.
As many Australians ignored the advice and filled pubs, clubs and public spaces over the weekend, the Prime Minister is adamant tougher rules were needed.
We don't now have any confidence that people would refrain from gathering in those ways, in those places. Dr Murphy has made it pretty clear that that is principally amongst the younger community.
And it's true, most young people don't get significant disease. But as a young person, you don't want to be responsible for the severe and possibly fatal disease of an older, vulnerable Australian.
But many young people say they are being cautious.
The uncertainty, I think, is concerning. For my own health, personally, probably less so. For other people, a lot so.
Even so, some are clearly not heeding the warnings.
I knew lots of people having like parties and stuff themselves because they were like, yeah, quarantine party, but it's like you're not practicing social distancing at all.
Yeah, I've heard of a few house parties and the bottle shop's still open, so I think they might carry on.
Until they like say we're in lockdown and we can't leave our houses, I don't think anyone's going to take it seriously.
The opposition is calling for a clearer message.
These actions might be regrettable, but hectoring will not help. Clear explanations and clarity will.
Has the messaging been clear about it?
I think so. Yes and no. Yes and no. It's sort of obviously it's a new thing every day.
Kind of, yeah. Maybe too much of it that you can't really pick out what they're trying to say.
Others don't want to believe what they're hearing.
I spent the weekend just gone in quite a busy way. I caught up with friends and I sort of in denial, really. Yeah.
But with job losses now happening, reality is starting to set in. James Carmody, ABC News.
Well, after weeks of resistance, the NRL has this evening announced it's suspending the 2020 season. Chloe Hart joins me from NRL headquarters. Chloe, it seemed inevitable, but why is the NRL acting right now after being so insistent that the game will go on?
Yes, the NRL has reluctantly pulled the pin on its season, and that is on health advice from experts who say the health and safety of players can no longer be guaranteed as this situation deteriorates so rapidly. All 16 clubs participated in a phone hookup this afternoon with management, and it's not clear how long the season will be suspended for. One of the other major contributors to today's decision was when the Queensland government announced that it would be closing its borders from Wednesday night. Now, obviously, the Melbourne Storm have to travel, and also 3 teams are from Queensland. So that decision essentially tied the NRL's hands.
It is indeed a deeply sad day, but one of the most responsible days in our game's history. We would not have reached this point unless the conditions had shifted so dramatically and so exponentially. Today's a difficult day for the rugby league community, both here at head office and across all of our clubs and players. Our priority is to do everything we can to give our game the best chance for a long and sustainable future.
And Chloe, Todd Greenberg talked there of the game's future. What does that future look like?
Yes, Todd Greenberg has given a stark warning about the future of the game. He said he could not guarantee that all 16 clubs would still be around next year. He also said that the business's finances will have to take a huge hit, all the way from the executive level to players taking salary cuts and also the staff. The offices here at NRL headquarters were closed this afternoon. Staff were told to take annual leave immediately up until May the 1st. As for the players, they won't be at training tomorrow, and the Warriors will head back to New Zealand. Administrators are still pushing for federal government support to be included in that stimulus package, as they say that they are in a catastrophic financial situation now.
A long way to play out. Chloe Hart, thank you. Well, the fallout from the AFL's suspension of its season yesterday continues, with 80% of staff at the league's headquarters sent home indefinitely, and those few remaining are taking a 20% pay cut. With rugby union's new domestic competition postponed, horse racing is the only survivor by a nose.
Less than 24 hours after the AFL shut down this season, only 20% of its staff remain.
The AFL industry is facing its biggest financial crisis in our history.
The other 80% have been stood down until football resumes. The AFL Players Association is working with the league to find a way to pay players. But without broadcast revenue, nothing is certain.
The situation is changing very rapidly, and for players, they don't know whether they're going to be paid beyond the end of this month.
Clubs are in crisis mode. The Gold Coast Suns already sent their football department home. The team's existence depends on handouts from the AFL.
Well, these are completely different times now. The AFL doesn't have the money to be bailing out clubs anymore.
Some of the league's Irish players, including Essendon's Conor McKenna, have already left the country. McKenna has struggled with homesickness, but is planning to return to Australia if the season resumes. Meanwhile, North Melbourne has apologised for Cameron Zurhaar and Nick Larkey's decision to host a party which didn't involve social distancing to celebrate the season suspension. Elsewhere, Rugby Australia has shelved plans to stage a 5-team domestic competition until at least May the 1st. Horse racing without the crowds will continue, saved by the fact it isn't a contact sport, at least not human to human anyway. Catherine Murphy, ABC News.
And now it's increasingly likely the Tokyo Olympic Games will be postponed until next year. Here's David Mark.
Last week, the IOC insisted the Games were on, but the world moves quickly in the age of the coronavirus.
They announced that they would consider postponing the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games.
In a letter to athletes overnight, contradicting his position of just 4 days ago, IOC President Thomas Bach said cancellation of the Olympic Games would destroy the Olympic dream of 11,000. Therefore, it's not on our agenda. This morning, the heads of all the Australian Olympic sports met.
We've decided to plan towards the hosting of a Games in 2021 in Tokyo.
We will think of the athletes first and foremost. We may have no option but to consider postponing the Games.
The decision has come as a relief to Australia's 2012 gold medalist in the 50k walk, Jared Talent.
It wouldn't have been a fair Games if it was to go ahead with so many countries in lockdown, athletes not being able to train. So it's definitely a good decision what's happened. I'm sure quite a few athletes will be relieved around the world.
It gives certainty to the athletes, it gives certainty to our sports, and that's the most important thing, and that's what they needed.
Now comes the logistical nightmare.
Moving the world's biggest sporting event that involves so many people, so many sports, not just athletes, but also the world's media, sponsors, the rest, is not easy to do.
The IOC has bowed to the inevitable in the face of enormous pressure. It's given itself 4 weeks to organise the details of the postponement and bought itself some of that most valuable commodity, time. David Mark, ABC News.
Just some non-corona news now, and one of the world's largest species of snake has been discovered outside a suburban home on the Gold Coast. The 5-metre albino Burmese python was found on the front porch of an Oxford home this morning. Experienced snake catcher Tony Harrison says he got a frantic call from the elderly homeowner wanting the reptile removed. He says the exotic snake is big enough to eat a small dog.
It's the biggest snake I've ever caught. I knew that it's somebody's illegal escaped pet, and I thought, wow, well, this has now broken the record. The biggest snake I had ever caught in 27 years was 13 kilo. This thing's got to be over 50.
The python is in the care of Biosecurity Queensland. Hysterical. Now, with the weather, here's Paul Higgins.
Mary, today's grey skies, I'm afraid, here in Melbourne didn't do a great deal to lift our collective mood, but warm and sunny days are on the way later this week. Take a look at this photo there. That bridge is normally packed during the day. Well, you can tell the seasons are changing when we drop below 0 overnight in the Alps, -2 at Falls Creek and Mount Hotham, 1 at Longrenong in the west. Cool and cloudy today across southern Victoria, but a sunny 24 along the Murray. We even had a magnitude 2.8 earth tremor near Broadford, north of Melbourne, at 11:32 this morning. It was our coolest day since the beginning of January, a city high of 17.1 at 2:44 this afternoon. Right now in the eerily quiet streets outside, it is 16. There were a few showers around Sydney, southeast Queensland, also the north tropical coast of Queensland and Darwin. Warm and sunny across in Perth. Low cloud today over southern Victoria with the onshore flow. This cloud over South Australia is an area of rain and thunderstorms with an upper level disturbance. It will drift eastwards. For us, high pressure will bring mostly settled weather this week. Just a few coastal showers Wednesday and Thursday as a front crosses Tasmania. That high will be east of us on Friday, so we'll get that warm north wind blowing here by then another cool change on Sunday. Tomorrow, hot and sunny in Perth. In Adelaide and Hobart, partly cloudy. Canberra will be mostly cloudy. In Sydney and Brisbane, a shower or two. Well, back home, a cool night is on the way with single-digit lows outnumbering those with double digits, then pretty much the same as it was today. Partly cloudy across the north, patchy morning fog in the south, the chance of a shower along the southwest coast and over the eastern ranges. On the bays, a south to southeasterly at 10 to 15 knots. Down to 10 in Melbourne tonight, 18 tomorrow, so 1 degree warmer than today, but we should see a bit more of that sunshine. Light winds will become southerly in the afternoon. Wednesday back to cloudy skies, a possible light shower at night, 18. Thursday partly cloudy and 21. Then Friday up to 26 degrees there. Morning fog or low cloud, then a mostly sunny day. After that, a warm weekend. Saturday sunny and 28 with a fresh north wind. Sunday 26, but a shower or two and possible thunderstorms and a cool change during the day. And next Monday, a morning shower or two and a top of 19 degrees. Mary.
Thank you, Paul, and that's it for now. Lee Sales is up next with 7:30.